This is Farris Khan with Smash the Numbers. It is now early afternoon, Michigan time, still morning here in California. I did a full analysis, was waiting for sports reference data so that I could make sure that I've got everything right. I have a full report card from Michigan. I have factored in statistics that I believe are high importance, medium importance, and low importance. I cover all of that in the video today. I have a score for Michigan, a positive versus negative score, both on offense and defense. I also cover other factors such as special teams and penalties. I predicted that this game would be, I believe I said 31 or 32-8. And it came pretty close to that. A couple more points for Fresno State, a few less points than I was expecting for Michigan, but all in all, pretty close to what I was predicting, also pretty close to what the line was for the game. Of course, if there wasn't that pick six at the end of the game, it is likely that the game would have been a lot closer, but the final result is the final result. So in the end, I think Michigan had kind of a what I'd call a dress rehearsal kind of situation. Some issues. It looked like they were rotating players, so they were treating it, I think, like a dress rehearsal. Fresno State is not a cupcake. There is a decent chance that they could make a run for the playoffs. Remember, one group of five team does make the playoffs. So it's possible that this is actually a pretty good team. So I'm not discounting that. So it's better that Michigan played a team like this. Won the game. Was it comfortable? No, it wasn't comfortable. But in the end, the score was pretty comfortable. I'll just put it that way. All right. So I'm going to go over defense. Then I'm going to go over offense. And then I'm going to go over special teams and other factors. We're going to do the full report card right now. All right. So let's start with the defensive side of the ball. I had 14 metrics. Many of them, the first 7 I have is high importance, 3 is medium importance, 2 is low importance. I did put a weighting factor. So metrics that are high importance gets weighted 3 times as much as metrics that are low importance. Now, when we look at this data, I'm just going to point out the ones that are high and low. So let's look at optimistically, the optimistic side right now. So turnovers, interceptions, Michigan had 2. In 2023, they averaged 1.2. Realistically, I figured they'd get about 1 interception per game, well above that. So that's good. Another thing that's good is yards allowed per carry. Michigan gave up only 0.4 yards per carry. That is stellar. That's as good as you can get. Of course, this includes sacks, but still as good as you can get. So in my weighting, basically, I'm giving them for each of these lines, I'm giving a score between a -5 and a +5, and a 0 is kind of neutral, kind of what I expected. And then I'm giving a weight of a 3, 2, or 1. So in that case, this is kind of the highest scoring thing, the yards allowed per carry. And then we also have the rushing yards allowed. In 2023, they gave up 90 yards per game. Realistically, I figured they could match that with Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, and everyone else. Fresno State, they only gave up 9 yards. So that's fantastic. So that also got a high score. Now, on the lower end, couple things that are kind of negative, and actually there are many things that were kind of slightly negative or trending towards actually pretty negative. So one thing is the first downs allowed. Michigan gave up 13 first downs per game in 2023, and I realistically thought that they could match that. In this game, they gave up 18, so 5 more first downs to Fresno State. So that's a pretty big negative. Another negative is the passing yards allowed. In 2023, they gave up 157. I figured they would give up more yards than that this year, so I put it as 165. But Fresno State got 235 yards of passing offense. They actually got almost double the number of passing yards as Michigan did. So I gave that a negative score. Many other variables here. You can take a screenshot of this and kind of look at my full analysis. But the bottom line here is that I produced a score for each of these rows. And my net score for defense, factoring in all the positives and all the negatives, was actually a negative 20. So kind of below expectations on defense after I weighted all these factors. Okay, now let's look at the offensive side. So now on the offensive side, there are two things that really stand out. The first is fumbles lost per game. They didn't lose any fumbles. I figured Michigan would be a heavy running team. And the more they use Alex Orji, the more that they're also going to run, it looks like. So that was one factor. But the other factor that I put in was percentage running plays. And I actually thought if they could keep that in moderation or even make that kind of go down a little bit, that would probably be better. The threat of the pass would be a good thing. Is the way that my logic was with respect to that. In 2023, Michigan ran 61% of the time. Against Fresno State, it was only 56% of the time. So they actually passed more. Now, the result of that passing, was it positive? Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But at least they showed that they were passing. They were getting closer to kind of a 50-50 run-pass ratio rather than being super run heavy. All right, so on the negative side, they did give up an interception, and all of last year, J.J. McCarthy gave up 4 interceptions, 3 in one game, but 4 for the entire year. Realistically, I didn't think they would come anywhere close to that kind of ratio of 0.3 interceptions per game. I figured optimistically maybe half an interception per game, realistically maybe 3/4 of an interception per game, and pessimistically an interception per game. So they did give up 1, so I got to knock them for that. Also, yards per passing attempt was not that great. I mean, we in 2023, they were 9 yards per passing attempt. Realistically, I figured 8 would be good. We wouldn't quite get up to the JJ level, but we were only at 4.5 yards per passing attempt, only 121 yards of total passing yards. So that those were not great numbers. We're definitely going to have to work on that. Offense, my aggregate score is a negative 24. You see that in the bottom right corner there. So, factoring in the score, the weight of the score, I'm giving a Farris score here at the end. That is what you see, negative 24. Okay, now let's go to other factors. All right, so other factors includes penalties. Now, I actually called this a positive thing. I know that there were a couple of penalties right at the end of the game, seemed a little ticky-tack, but in the end, they gave up 5 total penalties for the game. On average, Michigan gave up 8.1 penalties, so this is under the average. Also, total yards lost on penalties, it was kind of right on what it was last year, 70 yards versus 68 yards. So, both those factors, I think, the total penalties, they did keep it down. It would have been great if it wasn't for that, kind of at the very end of the game. So that's good. so net positive for penalties. Let's put it that way. Special teams. I actually gave a weight of a 10 just for this one line item because I'm kind of grouping all of special teams. My expectations for special teams, I'm kind of putting all together, and I'm weighting that a 10 in my spreadsheet. So because because they didn't have any gaffes and they had two very long field goals or relatively long field goals, I'm going to give them a score of a 4, a weight of a 10, a plus 40 for that factor. Time of possession. So it's another factor, and also kind of time on defense, time of possession, kind of factoring in together. We had the ball for 34 minutes versus 26 minutes. Adding all that together, I'm giving a factor of 55 as the total score on other things outside of offense and defense. When you factor that in, let's again review the other scores. We have a negative 20, if you see on the bottom right here for defense. We have a negative 24 for offense and a positive 55 for other, which gives me a total score of an 11. So I factored everything in. It is close to 0, but slightly positive. Let me go to the page here. Slightly positive and a total score of 11. All right. So as I said before, this is kind of a dress rehearsal for Michigan. I don't think they decided to show their hand. I was thinking that they might be a little bit more aggressive. It seemed like they were rotating players, even Will Johnson. I do think there was some concern by some that Will Johnson didn't have a great game, although he did have a pick six. He didn't have a great game. It appeared as if he was taking risks in this game. I'm not sure that he will take risks in the Texas game. Some other factors here, the improvement in offensive line from game 1 to game 2, that's certainly something to kind of hope for or kind of assume that will happen. Donovan Edwards didn't have a great game, but he seems to perform the best when the light is the brightest. So I'm optimistic about that. In terms of the quarterback battle, I didn't see anything dramatic other than experience, right? So the passing game was not that great. The running game was, I would say, kind of on par. The total offense was below par. Let's see what happens in this next game. Ideally, I'd like to see penalties stay low. I'd like to see turnover stay low. I'd like to see the defense do their thing. And I do think there is an element of this where the Michigan coaching staff is playing a little bit of chess here, where they're saying, hey, you may think that it's a good idea to throw the ball against Will Johnson. And I think they're almost baiting Texas to try, like Fresno State did. So I recently watched a video about Greg Maddux and how he used to, when he knew that he was going to face a team in the playoffs, he would actually groove a pitch or whatever to a batter in the regular season, and then have that in the batter's mind that they could whatever, get a home run or something if they did that in the postseason, and then he would totally change it up in the postseason. So I'm not saying to that extreme, but it could be that Michigan is actually giving Texas the signal to go ahead and try to test Will Johnson. And I think Will Johnson will not take as many chances. He'll maybe try to deflect a ball instead of intercept it. But on the other hand, if it was a pass that was like the pass that we saw where he got the pick six, he'll go ahead and be aggressive and try to make that play. So we'll see what happens with respect to that. But I do actually hope that Texas tries to throw the ball to them. Let me know if you have any other comments about my report card. Please do screenshots and kind of take a look at the whole report card. I'll post this as well. Thank you. Until next time.